We will be hearing stories of power all over the world, sharing their inner peace, their perseverance, and of course the connections that they are building with humanity, with community, and with human rights. First up is a beautiful lady who is smiling at me with a beautiful soul coming through her eyes. She is well known for translating complex social justice issues into accessible and creative narratives that engage broad audiences. Sahar Shirzad is a program maker, a writer, a human rights lawyer, but first of all, a beautiful human. As the founder of Refugee Millennials, she brings powerful stories of identity, migration, and justice to the forefront. Through her work, she creatively bridges critical social topics with wider audiences. And her father is filming in the audience because he's a very proud Baba. Please give her a warm applause, Sahar Shirzad.
God has left the building. This thought has echoed through my mind more and more in recent years, especially when I remember how we declared our mission in Afghanistan complete the moment the so-called perpetrators were dead and left the women behind, hostage to the Taliban, living today in the only country on earth where gender apartheid is the law of the land. In the lead up to this evening, I spent countless nights texting my friends. How's your family? Any news? We don't know. The internet is cut off. My Iranian and Afghan friends whose families live in Farsi-speaking regions are being bombed to dust, were and still are in despair. These desperate exchanges are not unfamiliar to me. 1.5 years ago, to another friend, how's your family in Gaza? They have nowhere to go. How's yours in Afghanistan? We have barely any humanitarian help after the earthquake in Herat. And before that, in 2021, how's your family in Kabul? I don't know what to say. They have nowhere to go. And I stand before you as one of the refugee millennials, tens of thousands of us, children from Bosnia, Syria, Rwanda, Iraq, Iran, Sudan, Liberia, Palestine, Afghanistan, the children of conflict, now adults, asking you, do we ever get a seat at the table when you talk about peace? The law forces us to fixate on the word safety, but who defines it? Governments of faraway states, to be granted asylum, we must prove over and over that our homes are unsafe enough. Only then we are allowed to be safe here, somewhere. Years of our lives are lost to this proving. Years we never get back. I was lucky. For me, it was just 2 years. Just 2 years of childhood stolen by running, hiding, waiting, not having education. Yet even when we arrive in these so-called safe countries, do we feel safe? Not when we grow up hearing every day that we are the reason for all that is wrong. We, the children of war, become young adults burdened by an extra weight because fascism likes to stitch imposter syndrome into our bones. How do you thrive in a place that insists your thriving is a threat? And yet, despite the dehumanization, we thrive, as I stand here, as my Baba is filming right now. Don't be shy. Even in darkness, we bloom. Fear of migrants has always been an effective tool for fascism. So lies are told, repeated so often that they become truth. For 20 years also, we've heard about Iran's nuclear button so many times that we can picture a caricature picture of Khamenei next to a big red button switch since 1995. For 20 years, we heard that the migrant child is a threat. But can we train our compassion instead? Just recently, the Minister of Migration and Asylum sent a dishonest tweet. Now the cabinet fell, so I have to say ex-minister, luckily. You're nodding like, hopefully she won't return. So the story was, young minors in asylum were planning, or an organization was planning to take them to a theme park because there was a carnival in the city, and the municipality was afraid that during that carnival there would be riots against these minors. So they were going to be taken to a theme park, and the minister said, not with our tax money, we're not going to give them a day off. Thank you. But I want you to remember something else. It's not the point. People gathered 100,000 euros in no time, not for weapons, but simply to give to these children for that day off. And I want you to remember that. With every protest against an asylum center, there's also a protest when it closes. This is the power of compassion when we amplify it instead of fear. So how do we imagine peace? For me, it's very simple. Love thy neighbor. As Confucius said, do not do to others what you not want to be done to yourself. A golden rule repeated in every thinkable faith today. Fear feeds our reptile brain. Fight, flight, freeze. But compassion rewires us for connection. And I believe we need more leaders who lead with compassion and courage. Leaders like Jacinda Ardern, who showed the world how to govern with empathy. And like Claudia Sheinbaum, Mexico's first female president, breaking barriers and showing what it means to put people first. I mean, we put all these men with reptile brains broadly in the news, and I refuse to name them today. But we don't speak about these female leaders enough. So ask yourself, who is your neighbor? No, quite literally. I want you to look at your left, and I want you to say your name, and I'm gonna make an example because I just had 8 minutes for this speech. I am, 1 second, I am Sahar, and in one sentence say what you are. I am Sahar, and I am a child of God, is what I would say in one sentence, what I would identify myself. Now look to your left, say your name, and say one sentence that defines you in the moment. Do it right now. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I think we said the one sentence. I will keep talking until you look back at me. I've led quite some demonstrations, but I don't think you guys want me to chant right now. Thank you very much. In times of chaos, the first radical act is to open the door, not to slam it shut, to share what we have, to refuse to politicize a basic human right, the right to safety. Now, if we look around, NATO next door, even left-leaning parties, even the Green Party, wants to spend 5% of our wealth on weapons. If we normalize investing in weapons, weapons will remain in the hands of people who shoot children. Children dying while waiting in line, families trembling with hunger and fear. We're letting children die waiting for aid. We call these crimes committed by the Army of Israel inhumane very often, but if you ask me, It's very human. We the people, it is our money that has been put into these weapons. So what is NATO normalizing by investing in weapons? Fight in humanity with what exactly? Will mass destruction bring us freedom? Will bombing hospitals and schools bring us security? But more importantly, will so-called legal weapons be the answer to stop these illegal destructions? No. We must speak of another world. We must become, each of us, ministers of peace. As Karen Armstrong writes in her book, in Semitic languages, the word for compassion is related etymologically to rahim, rahem. We say rahim in Farsi. The icon of mother and child is an archetypal expression of human love. Rahim means womb. It evokes the maternal affection that in all likelihood gave birth to our capacity for unselfish, unconditional altruism. It may well be that the experience of teaching, guiding, soothing, protecting, and nourishing their young taught men and women how to look after people other than their own kin, developing a concern that was not based on cold calculation, but imbued with warmth. We humans are more radically dependent on love than any other species. Our brains have evolved to be caring and to need care, to such an extent that they are impaired if this nurture is lacking. This is our human truth. And yet globally, we have never truly honored it. Though borders no longer define our closeness, I mean, technologically, I can click on a link and there's a Zoom video call away and I can speak to someone in Afghanistan, yet we scroll further and further from real peace. So let us remember, God cannot leave the building. The Sufis say, light, God is within us. We are that building. Peace starts here, not through mass destruction, but through soft forces. I want you to close your eyes. Please close your eyes, thank you. I want to share with you my vision of peace. Come with me. Imagine a warm, safe Afghanistan. A woman biking home from yoga and meditation class, not surrounded by Western expats, but by her own neighbors. Together not as exercise and sun salutations, but as quiet devotion. She rides through the crisp mountain air under the Banda Amir cliffs. She stops at a roadside cart to buy a pomegranate, not from a child forced to work, but from an adult earning a living with dignity. She cycles home, her hair loose in the wind, free. You can open your eyes. Peace is not epic. It is these small sensory freedoms. I would like to end with a poem of Harriet Roland Holst. In Dutch it's called De Zachte Krachten. In Dutch they say, de zachte krachten zullen zeker winnen. The gentle forces, they will surely vanquish at last. If I kept silent, all light will darken. All warmth in me would extinguish. So I stand here, refusing silence. You too carry light. You too carry warmth. Be a minister of peace. Let the gentle forces win. Thank you.
And if it's okay with you, Sahar, just a personal something. Both of us are doing this for a long time now, off script, Barclay, sorry. But you moved me to tears because both of us need to get sick before we can heal again. Also, Rumi said, wound is the place when the light enters. I will only share my thing. I got cancer because of the war, and I was a kid in a war, exposed to a lot of nuclear waste. So that was what was waiting for me in my happily ever after in freedom. I don't want and wish none of that to any kids living in war wherever in the world. And also I don't wish for none of us to fight every day to own our light that we were given by birth just to exist, to feel at value of value. So really, don't let more people get sick. We are human first, and we deserve to breathe this clean air everywhere in the world. And ladies and gentlemen, have you seen that we only have a lot of amazing, powerful women on this stage? Like, just 2 kilometers from here, the NATO summit, do you think that they have a lot of these women over there too? So there's also some kind of clue in there probably, yeah? I don't mean there's no men and don't need it. I mean, you will come up later on, Kumi, no worries, but we need each other. The equality thing is very important, but we really need to make space and light for one another. And another powerhouse is coming up. It's also a strong woman, Rugyatu Nene Turai Koroma, a powerful voice for community-led change in Sierra Leone, a former refugee, once again, and a lifetime activist. She has transformed harmful practices like female genital mutilation through education and dialogue, providing and proving that human rights and culture can coexist. They can. As a former deputy minister and co-founder of Ninike, I pronounce it now twice, Ninike. She continues to push for systematic change, driven by the belief that true power must empower all. And you have a lot of fans too, by the way, because they're all filming all over, and they're the young generation. Give it up, please, a lot of love for Nene. Yeah, definitely, she's very nice. And good in what she does. She said to Maria, who is from the Hague Humanity Hub, I'm so jealous because you have so many amazing volunteers. A warm applause, please, for all those people who work and help as volunteers, because the silent voices we don't hear so much. Okay, can we give a round of applause for our Sahar Shirzad, Nene, come on up, Jess O'Connell, and Kumi Naidu. Yeah, I love, see how community works? Help each other upstairs. It begins as easy as that, isn't it? They're gonna be handing you out some microphones. Amazing. Grab definitely some water. Sahar, you're raised well, eh? Right away. That's how it, without words, eh? Thanks so much. Thank you so much. Sahar, I already started with the tough question to you to do some reflection for us. Can you reflect on what touched you?
Wow, yeah. I mean, we just heard music, so I'm still there, and I'm getting emotional. Yeah, I think that what touched me and what you also said about art and activism is that I work mostly also in the art and culture sector, making programs and trying to translate human rights to, as you said, ordinary people, whatever that may be. But yeah, the translation is so important. And the reason that I get emotional is because, I mean, we're in, what is this, I'm sorry for my French, fuckery we are in right now, right? And in the midst of chaos, in the face of a genocide, in everything that we're scrolling past, I mean, we're scrolling past cute kittens and then a child dying, we're scrolling past a relationship breaking up and then war images. And in the midst of all of this, art is so important. And in the midst of all of this, it's always moved me that people from our regions and images from there also, that they still sing and they still dance. And what you said, like, that is the tool to keep our humanity, because I don't want to deflect away from the fact that when we say, oh, this is so humane, unfortunately, the atrocities happening is human-made, man-made. But to keep the soft powers, as I said, in our hearts is through art, through music, through art, through imagining, not losing our imagination. As I said, peace is very, very mundane. I want to go to my country and hold the soils in my hand. Peace is not something epic or iconic or big, it's very small. And it doesn't need to happen with foreign frameworks. What needs to happen with the help of others is I, as a migrant, want to stop screaming to see me as human. I am fucking human. I have my basic human rights. I don't need to be grateful that I got my basic human rights and that you got your basic human rights. I don't need foreign policymakers to go to my country and tell us there what we need to do. I need you here to scream for us and fight fascism for us. Don't let us be in the forefront anymore. So yeah, that's the messages I got from you guys. And as you said, Martin Luther King did so bravely, but I need more people who don't look like Martin Luther King or are not migrants to be in the forefront now. Yeah, that would be my reflection, I guess, from everything I heard.
Beautiful, and not only in front of you, next to you, behind you.
Yeah.
Next to each other. Definitely beautiful. Someone else who just wants to add, so that it doesn't become a question and answer game we start to play, but just a beautiful conversation. So I'm just opening the floor. I love those the most.
Sure. Thank you for those remarks, actually. I think you summed it up well. I think the thing that I take away from a moment like this, and stories and art and culture and courageous conversations, is that all of the challenges that we face that have been named tonight really involve us changing our perspective and participating. And I think a lot about what that means, being from a country that doesn't have to participate in the same way as other countries. And I think that's a challenge that we face in the United States, where I am, is getting people off their phones. You know, I've been here a few days, and I was remarking to my colleague Julie, who's with me, we didn't see phones out at the cafes, anywhere. And I think we're disconnected right now and dehumanized by what we're seeing. And I think it requires participation to get to a place of peace. But there's a lot of work ahead, at least for the communities that I'm around. And I want to underline what you said, which is more people who look like me need to be on the front lines of that.
Ikumi.
So I just pick up on the question of participation. So, as I mentioned, you know, I had a big personal tragedy where our son was one of South Africa's most popular musicians, very sensitive child, very concerned about humanity, very magnanimous in his success. And he is just one person in a growing number of young people around the world. I must say to young people in the audience here today, I'm so sorry I am so sorry our generation let you down so badly. You will never find a biggest bunch of losers than my generation. We have run out of fresh ideas. We are constantly putting old ideas on the table, right? We are contaminated by bad experiences, and we constantly want to push those bad experiences on you. So I say to you, we are facing a global mental health crisis right now. And we need participation for two reasons. One, those in power are not going to shift until they can see serious numbers visibly mobilized around them. And to many young people here, I know that you are frustrated and you might be tempted into violence. But I want to say to you, be very, very careful that violence is unethical, unstrategic, and untactical. The Donald Trumps of the world are praying that you engage in violence, because what they will do is insert into peaceful protests what are called agents provocateurs, people who will make violence happen, so, for example, they can bring in troops and potentially exert the Insurrection Act and suspend the Constitution in the United States, for example. So I say to you, that's one reason, right? That if we don't mobilize and visibly show large numbers of people participating in a diversity of ways, we don't stand a chance. But there is a second reason. Right now, you know, I was in a march in New York of about 500,000 people several years ago on climate justice. And there was these two young girls from Philadelphia, right? And they were carrying a sign that said, "Sorry, mama, you're not going to be a grandma," right? It completely broke my heart. And you know how many young girls I meet in the climate justice movement who say things to me like, "Kumi, I guess it's not responsible for us to have kids, right?" I mean, imagine that we've put this question before our children because we have failed to act when the science was clear for a long time. So we need participation also to help us. Participation is itself going to be an antidote to despair. Participation is what's going to give our young people and older people a sense of community, a network of support, and so on. So I just want to say, those in power who are pushing fascism are banking on us staying unengaged. They are banking on us being fearful. Show them that we don't accept that. Show them that we can rise above fear, and show the courage that this moment of history calls for. Thank you.
The long breath and the long term. Nene.
I want to take from your presentation and the action you took as somebody from the US. And it just reminds me the saying of the late UN Secretary General, Kofi Annan, when he said, "The world is a global village." Simply means things happening in one country are also happening in other countries. But one of the things I like, and I think that's what we are doing, but we need to do more, is the issue of mobilizing communities. Activists have been talking, lobbying, advocating, and as you say, nothing is changing, and it seems as if everybody is burning out. So mobilizing communities so that communities also be part of what we've been advocating for is what is needed.
And then how do we do that? How do we do that?
And again, you can do this by getting the young people involved. The young people will have to take leadership. They will have to learn. But most of them have been carried away by social media and what is said on social media that actually is not like the reality, but given bad influence. So we also have to make sure the young people use social media in a positive way, but in a way of also addressing, because we are in the digital world, And everybody, as we sit here, is watching what is happening. So if the young people can begin to use social media in a positive way by calling our leaders out, then they will understand that change is needed and that the whole world is calling for this. But talking, conferences, we've been doing this. Actions, more than before, is what we need now.
And stepping down and making space for them too, right? I mean, otherwise staying in those positions, of course.
Yeah, I honor what you're saying, and I understand that you're saying that, but I do not fully agree, because I am in awe of what the young generation is doing right now, but also with social media. It has many sides, looking at who's leading the social media platforms, but I am also very, very much impressed, even as a legal professional in the international field, even though the tribunals are not having effect. I am so impressed by the young generation, how they have mobilized the Free Palestine movement through social media and how they have utilized these platforms to mobilize. I haven't seen in my life these many protests happening as it has happened over the past 3 years through the usage of social media. And I also think that the young generation is really sick of the systems that are in place that cannot be broken, so they are busy creating their own systems right now. And I think it's becoming devastating to them that this is the system they need to participate in order to have a seat at the table. They're like, no, we're going to break that table and we're going to make our own new table. And that's also what I'm seeing in the younger generation. So I do want to add that, because I also want to add some hope in here that even though it seems that impunity is in power and there's an arrest warrant for Netanyahu, I mean, what are we teaching the new generation about our legal systems right now? They really are using and utilizing these platforms also to mobilize. So I do want to give that credit to them.
So I just want to support that comment and say that one of the mistakes we've made historically is we've thought that the main threat to peace, democracy, justice, human rights is what you might call the repressive state apparatus, army, police, formal laws, and so on. And of course, the repressive state apparatus is really powerful because it constrains the terms of public participation and civic life. But actually, the biggest threat we face is not the repressive state apparatus. It is the ideological state apparatus, by which I mean the framework for education, the framework for religion, the funding of arts and culture, and most importantly, the framework for communications and media. I have been saying for decades now, having lived in the United States, and when I was in exile, I was a visiting scholar at Yale in my early 20s. When I looked at the media there, I was shocked. You know, let's do a quick experiment. How many of you have watched CNN International? Please raise your hand at some point. Please raise it. Keep it up. Okay, just watch the people whose hands are up. Those hands are not up. How many of you have watched CNN International? Keep your hands up. How many of you who've watched CNN International think that it's a left-wing or radical or ultra-liberal news media? Nobody. Oh, sorry, is there anybody? Nobody, okay? But look at what the people in the United States face, right? In the continuum of media in the United States, you've got Fox and Newsmax on the far right, and you've got CNN on the left. I mean, you can't really call it left, but within the US context, right? In the European context, you wouldn't call it left at all, right? But this version of CNN that citizens in the United States see is even a more conservative version of what we see. They see something called CNN or CNN headline news. So when you might be tempted to have an anti-American sentiment sometimes, which I pick up in Europe and around the world, I want to say to you, the average American citizen is also a victim, just as the average white South African was a victim, right? Because they have been sold a bunch of lies in a media environment that is completely constrained. So in this moment that we are in, communications, and it's ridiculous that Elon Musk, thank you for taking him from South Africa, by the way.
What a gift.
Please don't send him back.
You can have him back.
So think about it, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, two people who have sold their souls completely to fascism, right? The power they have on the communications environment is crazy, right? How did our regulation of media, corporate media, right, be as bad as it is right now? So we ignore at our own peril a communications environment that is stacked against us. We have to make the best use of the broken system of media we have, but we also have to push for greater media diversity and come up with alternative ways of reaching people. Otherwise, fascism is going to continue to rise as it is happening right now.
Jess.
Well said. Yeah, the media environment is a huge problem. I think you can see, since you brought him up, with Elon Musk and Doge and this current administration, what they have done across the United States with remarkable speed, which is to go after the education systems, to go after our work across the world in aid, which was, by the way, the very first thing they did was to shut that down, was to close us off, shut us down, and prevent us from being in conversation and support and community with other countries. That's by design. In fact, they've told us what they're doing with Project 2025, and we know what's coming next. But education, culture, media are huge challenges in the United States, primarily because of the corporate culture. I think we saw with the inauguration of Donald Trump that was for sale. All you had to do was take one look at that day and who was behind him, which were media and tech moguls, essentially. And I think we are going to have to rise up. I do think, though, and I will say, that in my work, and I do work with some young people in other countries as well, what we have been learning and seeing and hearing is really this idea of digital detox, this idea of just putting it down and spending time away to be in conversation and to be in community. And it's remarkably healthy, and it's like anything, it gives us an opportunity to change our perspective. And I think the change of perspective is needed, particularly for Americans who have been fed lies from Fox News and conservative and right-wing kind of propaganda for 15 years straight, kind of no matter where you are. People think that you opt into that, but it exists in every element of American society. On at a hospital, on at a pub, in a store, it's taken over. And so it requires a tremendous amount of effort and a lack of apathy to overcome it. And we have to build that muscle to be able to do that.
And this is something that's all over the world, by the way. It's not only America. If I can see the countries.
I was just going to respond that just in the Netherlands, the cabinet fell. Well, that's become a usual thing these days with the Netherlands, the cabinet falling again. But the fascist party was in power, and it's like literally copy-pasting Trump. And I really do not want to glorify or romanticize Europe being more on the left or even the Netherlands. And what really, really pissed me off is that when Trump won, all of a sudden, a lot of Dutch white people were like really shocked this time. I'm like, listen, 1.5 years ago, there was a Trump clone here who got the most votes in the Netherlands. Why are we more vocal about Trump every single time? We do not even know that our own house is really on fire when it comes to fascism. So even if young people here or people here in the Netherlands would be less on their phones than in America, I don't think that that's fully the problem. I think that fascism, as I said in my part, is really utilizing a tool way too successfully, and that's xenophobia and that's anti-migration. Why the hell is that so successful 20 plus years after 9/11? Here in Europe, here in the Netherlands, it's happening right here where we're sitting. It's not just America. And I think that we really need to collectively, as I said, in the forefront, there needs to be Dutch white people, there needs to be European white people with the decolonial mindset and making us understand that the whole culture of colonialism started here in Europe, started here in the Netherlands.
So guys, let's get practical. we have listened to your amazing stories. We got inspired. We feel it in every cell of our body. And it's something that we know that we can transform to others who come after us. What can we do today and from today upon with everything that you have shared with us? Give us practical tools how we can become the ripple effect of everything that we have experienced here today with one another.
I'm happy to go. So, first, refuse to accept that your voice doesn't matter. Second, refuse to accept that your participation cannot make a difference. Third, refuse to accept that you are the blame of the problem. So the fossil fuel companies, for example, sort of almost make it seem that it's your fault because you drive and you use energy and so on. We want to do all of those things, but we never said we wanted to get dirty energy, right? That was a choice they made and they fostered it upon us. And fourth, don't think you can do it on your own only. Build community around yourself and choose things that give you joy, right? Say if you're a school teacher and you're an arts teacher, right? Don't go sit in a meeting drafting a constitution for, making rules for a constitution for your local body. Go work in the community with young people, do murals that show positive messages for peace, justice, and hope. If you choose things that you enjoy doing, right? It could be, if you're a lawyer, focus on strategic litigation, right? If you are a plumber, go build homes for people who are homeless, right? Choose things that you have an inclination to do and things that give you joy, because we have to make activism joyful. And I want to remind everybody that activism is sexy. Really, we have to make it even more sexy than it is. Really, we must not make it, to be an activist, you have to go to prison and get beaten up. Now that is part of the package, right? And having witnessed and experienced that a fair amount of my life, I can say to you that we have to, because basically the far right has actually made involvement. One of the reasons a lot of people voted for Donald Trump in the first election, they just found him really, really entertaining, right? He was an entertainer, right? And so I'm not saying we have to behave like that, right? But we have to, because quite frankly, many of us who are in the human rights and gender justice field and all, we are really serious, earnest. They're quite boring. Okay, maybe I'm not speaking for everybody, I'm speaking for myself. Yeah, okay. Some people look at me, no, I'm not boring, right? So no, really, really, we have to make participation attractive, right? And so what you choose to do, only you can choose what's the right thing. And let me just conclude by making this point. All efforts at social change is contextual, right? So for example, I support very strongly peaceful civil disobedience, right? And I've got a track record of doing that, occupying oil rigs in the Arctic and all of that, right? But let me give you an example. Just because civil disobedience is part of the activist toolbox doesn't mean the same kind of civil disobedience can be used in every context. So let me give you an example, right? There's a civil disobedience thing called mooning. Do people know what's mooning? Mm-hmm. So mooning is like, say, four of us, before we came to meeting, we wrote one letter on our bum cheek and then we pulled out our pants and it said, stop climate change, right? Now that might work in San Francisco, New York, or London. It's not going to work so well in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, or Indonesia, right? It doesn't mean that it's wrong, right? It just means we have to be thoughtful about how we do it. So I support Extinction Rebellion, but I was publicly critical of Extinction Rebellion when they blocked tube stations, underground train stations in London, which working class, mainly people of color, use, for example, right? So we have to be thoughtful of what tool we deploy in what context. And if we do that, and we make sure that we are doing it with love and affection and showing optimism to people, I think that's how we ourselves can participate, and we can get others to participate with us.
Thank you, Kumi.
I never thought I'd get a chance to use the word bum cheek in a panel. It's the first time I've done so. I'm very
You're
pleased with
welcome.
myself.
You're welcome. You are welcome. That's why I love just opening it and then not asking too many questions. That body archive, it's still getting deeper and deeper understanding of what you mean. You feel also like an archive. All of you feel like an archive listening to you guys. Your mind goes all over. Jess, what do you want to share? What can we do tomorrow, today, and from now on?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it so well. I really think we have to show up. We have to show up for our neighbors, for our communities. The thing that gives me hope isn't political parties or politicians, it's people. And we're seeing that every single day in the United States, particularly around family separation and deportations. What we're seeing in states, even where they don't have political power, is people blocking vans, protecting families, and making change. And making change in legislation too, even though they have no state or federal political power. It is possible when people come together, and you have to show up. And I think this is important to say as well, because we are working in this sort of security space right now. Safety is personal. It's different for everybody. Everybody's lived experiences, cultural experiences, professional experiences. I haven't been to jail, but more people like me should be for our beliefs. And we're in a different moment in time that requires different things. And so people have to evaluate for themselves what that looks like. But everybody can show up in some way, some of the ways that I talked about. You don't have to do it publicly. You can donate quietly, you can sign an email, you can bear witness to something so that people are being seen, the people that are doing things. You can do all different kinds of things to build muscle memory to get to that place. But I will say this, people have to see other people putting themselves on the line and making change. If they do, courage is contagious.
Can I say one thing? I just want to support Jess on this issue. I really don't want to communicate that like all of us have to engage in civil disobedience. My sister, who died at the age of 56 from brain cancer, was somebody who nobody would have described as an activist. But whether it was stealing her husband's car and leaving it on the windowsill so we can go pick it up when we were 16 years old and go spray Free Mandela graffiti, that was activism. She was behind the scenes helping. So if you're a single mom with 3 kids, for example, society shouldn't expect you to go and get arrested and be in prison and so on. So we have to also accept people in terms, and we shouldn't be judgmental, right? People should be able to contribute what they can contribute. And that's why I say all of us can be involved in different ways. So thank you for making that.
Nene.
We have dictators because we are all standbys out of fear. So the first thing we need to do is to see how we overcome fear in us. And then let's mobilize, build team, train in active nonviolence. When you train in active nonviolence, and as I say, you take in protests, peaceful protests, you show to leaders, to dictators, to a broken system that this is wrong. But we have to do that by teams. I have an example of saying women were never allowed to vote in the US. But there was just one woman who stood up one day and knocked the door of another woman to say, you know what, we need to go out, we need to vote, we need to do this. And they went to the other door. That was how women mobilized themselves. Now, they are not only voting, but they are voted for. And in my country, it's also a big example that we have. People fear to talk about tradition. People fear if you say this, you will not win an election. That was the time I stepped up in 2007. And I said, you know what, I have to take the risk. We cannot continue to be like this. People are dying silently. Women and girls are suffering. And I killed fear in me. I took up the sacrifice and the challenge. The first thing I did was to convince my family to say, you need to support me in doing this. And again, we lost a family. We cannot continue to be quiet. So one of the things is we should not be bystander. We all should participate, and participate public and positively, to make sure we fight against broken systems.
Before you answer, I'm here because I was, and my people were killed by their neighbors and by their surroundings. So the things that you're saying, they're very important, and I support you guys. But how do we do that, and how do we work with one another when you are made to be opposite, in which you're in basically not? But how do we work with that? Sorry for making it more complex.
Every time when I have to.
Sorry,
it's,
yeah.
more complex.
I know
I thought you were our
a bit
friends.
longer, so I know that you can handle this, baby.
I'm just gonna do a little detour and come
Yeah,
back to your
please.
question, yeah? I wanna ask the audience a question. I find it always like, it's an out-of-body experience to be like an Afghan Dutch woman and on stage and in front of an audience that's often white and Dutch. And then, yeah, I do think activism is very sexy when you stand on a stage as an Afghan woman talking about women's rights. So I wanted to ask, who here has voting rights in the Netherlands? Vast majority in the room, I think. Can you make it more up? Like,
Higher.
I think this is the vast majority in the room. Yeah. Yeah, so the reason I'm bringing up being Afghan again and again is also an out-of-body experience is that I'm from a country that the first time in history they invaded a country that had nothing to do with being perpetrators of 9/11. It was the first time that a state got the right to self-defense to go in a country where the perpetrator was hiding, an uninvited guest. And my country is shattered. And I think it is what is a tool? Bare minimum. Vote anti-militarism, please, so that countries like mine are not shattered as it is today. 20 plus years, one of the longest missions in history, and look what has happened to my country. Your party, Deputy Mayor, I respect you, I'm really glad you're here today, but please talk to them also about this. 5% of our wealth is gonna go to NATO, is gonna go, what is this gonna do? I think we radically, really radically need to be into abolitionism? How do you say it? Abolitionism. Thank you for bringing up jails and prisons. Angela Davis, for example, in America, stated this. She becomes sexy and writes books in activism after she was imprisoned, after she had to suffer. Why am I advocating that my brown body or Angela Davis's black body shouldn't be in the forefront? It does become sexy because I won an award, Peace Prize, 2 years ago for advocating the way I do. But in that same year, when I went on a stage for Climate March, I was at the biggest climate march in the Netherlands, and I gave the mic to a Palestinian. Our mics were turned off. Then suddenly it became unsexy. I wasn't allowed to use the word genocide. A man attacked us on stage. On tweets, people tweeted to me, go and be raped by Hamas. I mean, I am used to being sent back to my own country in tweets, but this was a violence I hadn't faced before. So we need you in the forefront so I can retire as an activist with my brown body, with being an Afghan woman. Please use your voting rights for that, and do use your bodies for that, because if people see themselves in you, like the biggest demonstration in history after the 80s when the Rode Lijn was filled with Dutch people, that, we need more of that. Thank you. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, not yet. But Kumi can.
Yeah, no, I can't. But it's what's happening. You know, is that people who have lived as neighbors for centuries in some cases, right, in the US, in other parts of the world, are being consciously divided, right? Because, I mean, it's so ridiculous that a person who has a track record of disrespecting the working class, not only in the US is the most clear example, is able to mobilize the working class to vote for him, right? And it does say, I'm sorry to say also, Jess, it does say a very bad message for the Democratic Party, okay? Yeah, and you know, and so what I'm saying is that in this moment that we are in, this question that you raise, what we've seen so far, if we don't get smart and if we don't find a way of building peace in communities like the work Nene is doing, for example, we are going to see more and more of it. And just a reflection on the US, which I want to offer, because I think I agree with you. It's, yeah, in Europe, in big time. You know, when I was Secretary General of Amnesty International, I would go to various countries for work, and every second or third country I went to, Steve Bannon either was there just before me or just was coming just after me. So you need to understand that the right-wing movement in the US, which is very well resourced, is causing shit here and all over the world, right? But important reflection from Julius Nyerere, if I can bring a African hero to it. Some of you will remember Nyerere. He was the founding president of Tanzania, and he died with no corruption and in simplicity in his village. He was asked by an American journalist once, why do you all have so many one-party states in Africa? And Nyerere started by saying, well, listen, you know, we were fighting the colonial powers, we had to unite everybody under one force, but I'm sure over time, you know, political parties will emerge and all of that. And then Nyerere turned to him and said, you know, however, you know, when I look at Europe, Europe is far from perfect. They were the ones who gave us colonialism, slavery, and all of that. But at least in Europe, you'll have at least one country in each, one party in each country, one party that is for capital, for business and business interests, the conservatives, and you'll usually have at least one party in the interests of the working class. When I look at the United States, both your parties are completely in the interests of the working class, and in my mind, he said, even the US is a one-party state, but in typical American extravagance, you've got two of them. Right? So when I look at the US today, right, one thing that Donald Trump has done that has been helpful, he has actually created a distance between the two parties, right? But if I'm brutally blunt, as a young person fighting against for democracy in South Africa, we never looked at the US as inspiration, because all that has happened in the US, in my judgment, is we've moved from a liberal oligarchy to an ultra-illiberal oligarchy. And unless the Democratic Party begins to genuinely serve the interests of the working people, they will not come back into power in the way they need to and what the world needs them to do. We need the Democratic Party to bring sanity, but I have to say there are far too many old people in leadership in the United States. They need to make space for younger people to come in, and they must stand up and genuinely fight for working people. Thank you.
You know, you have an answer?
Yeah, very short. I can
Please.
answer your question maybe to give an example of how the Taliban exists and is in power now is also because of weapons that were distributed in Pakistan to so-called freedom movements. Where did those weapons come from? I mean, yes, it is also an issue between the Afghans themselves. As you said, our own neighbors wanted to kill us. But then again, where is it fueled from? It always comes from somewhere. And that's why I am so anti-weaponization. Our scorched earth, ecocide and genocide goes hand in hand. The climate crisis, if we are creating mass destruction that can destroy our land where once olive trees are, what are we doing? I think we need to look at the root of where the weaponization comes from when you are becoming your neighbor's enemy. I think that is also very important to look at.
Definitely. I loved really what you have shared. Did you love what they have shared to share too? It's a great honor to share a light that we get when you have an opportunity to be on a stage like this. During the Second World War, when Hitler's people called the Moroccan king and asked, "Do you have some Jews for me?" The Moroccan king said, "I only have my own Moroccan people. I don't know what you mean." Tito, who has and is seen in the Western countries as a dictator, what that man wisely did in the Balkans, in those 7 countries that we know now, who were one country, Yugoslavia, was shifting up to brother and sisterhood, making things what you want to be and live and feel, something that you do in your private life, in your communities. But supporting the brother and sisterhood is making us all human and equal again on all parties. If I can answer my own question, it's not common for the moderator, sorry, but I really believe that it starts when we see each other as a human. And if you live in the Netherlands, we're all Dutch. And if you live in America, we're all American. If you live in South Africa, we're all South African. Sierra Leone. But also, we are all equally on this earth and have the ability to become and be whoever we want, and not what others make us. So really, be like the king of Morocco then, and just say, "I'm another human being, and I see you as another human being, and you have the same rights as I do." Because that's the easiest way, and then all of that other shit we don't have to do anymore. Sorry for my language. We are getting way out of time, but we started 10 minutes late, so. Never again is now, people. Never again is now. Please give them a warm applause. Kumi, Jess, Nene, and Sahar.
And thank you for being here. Applause for yourselves. Thank you for being.
We are not finished yet. We are not finished yet. We're gonna have a beautiful ending with you, Nicella. I promised you a beautiful ending, so no worries. Yeah, they're gonna be transforming the stage again. I will just do a little flip, finish off now, and then leave the stage to you so that nothing else is needed to be done. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here tonight, and all of you all over the world who are watching us. It's important that we collect and be together, because the feeling that you have when you are joined with one another, that's so, so important, because we need each other to survive this day and age where we are in now. Thank you to Amare. And of course, thank you to the Just Peace Festival for organizing this Hague Talks, and the Hague Humanity Hub, the Leiden University, the Municipality of The Hague, our media partner, Holland Park Media, interpretation partner, Interperfree, and thank you to amazing people who have done a lot of work that we don't see. Maria is over there. She doesn't like to be in the spot. Alexandre, where are you, Alexandre? I don't know where you are. You're pretty tall. Yeah, you can set up. It's over there. Alexandre. And she just left the stage. Barkley, where are you? All the volunteers, would you please stand up? All the volunteers, would you please stand up? Thank you so, so much for everything that you have done. We're here until the 22nd, so please join and see on the website all the rest of the program. But there is also an open letter on the website. And this open letter is an important thing that we need to sign with one another. Stand for just peace. As global leaders gather in The Hague for the 2025 NATO summit, we call for a balanced vision of peace and security, one that places people at its heart. At a time when the focus is increasingly drawn towards defense capabilities and military preparedness, sorry guys, thank you so much. We urge equal and sustained attention to and investment in the long-term work of building resilience, inclusive and just society.